So the island to develop me, my friends, if you look at the very first mountain there.
Denis Villeneuve has a grasp on character-driven narratives, small in scope or large in scope. Thanks to the genius of Frank Herbert, here's a story that's on that scale, but with characters and relationships and stories that are dense, you know, and felt. These were the things that made me want to act.
Guess I'm not in the mood today.
Mood? What does mood have to do with it?
Now fight!
Part of what makes Dune so great. It's an incredible cast of characters and an incredible cast of actors.
It's very easy to get lost into the concepts, into the scale. But at the end of the day, it's very powerful and complex story. Dune is the story of the Atreides family that falls into the trap set by the emperor, who's getting more and more jealous of their growing popularity.
House Atreides stands as a beacon where every other house in that galaxy is in reference to that, either as enemies or as friends. What intrigued me about Leto Atreides is the tragic nature of the character. He wants to not only make sure that his people survive, but that his son is the kind of leader that he thinks he should be.
Paul Atreides is the son of Duque Leto and Lady Jessica, and he's the future of House Atreides. He's a young man who's facing extraordinary circumstance, trying to navigate it with integrity within the tradition of House Atreides.
I'll frame any of these. Sand compactors and all kinds have been used. Thanks.
Gurney Halleck and Duncan Idaho are close allies of Duque Leto. Did feel like big brothers. You know, they rib him, especially Jason.
He's the protector of the Atreides. I mean, he's definitely the head knight who watches over the family. Sworn duty, I mean, I think that's what any honorable knight soldier does. That's his family. That's who he bleeds for.
Gurney Halleck is a combat trainer. He's a warrior. He's a poet warrior.
And he is distrustful of all of it, because he is by nature distrustful, like every security guy you ever see who's looking at things that aren't there. He's a very strict but fun, visceral, paternal, maternal. He's all of those things to Paul.
Paul has all these teachers, and everyone has poured all that they know into this young man.
Timothée Chalamet is a human computer, and I wanted to go away from the cliche of the very cold human being.
He had lived and worked with this family for so long that he had really come to have a dear affection for them.
Duque is a trusted member of the family. He has served for the Atreides family for a long time. It's a complex and heartbreaking role for an actor to play.
Lady Jessica is part of the Order of the Bene Gesserit. This order that she's a part of, we can say, make her perhaps the non-traditional partner to Duque Leto.
The congregation that influence politics from the shadows, that have access to all the leaders, that are counselors and spies for all the leaders in the world.
Come here.
This group of women who carries enormous strength and powers. They are bodyguards, they are fighters, they can read people.
I hold at your neck the gom java.
One of the strengths that Jessica has is that she's been taught by the Reverend Mother.
The Reverend Mother is interested in Paul because there's a prophecy that a member of the Order of the Bene Gesserit will one day give birth to the One, for lack of a better description. And Paul could perhaps be that person.
You're lucky he didn't die in that room.
Jessica is having to deal with being a mother, a lover, and this Bene Gesserit. And she always has to question which priority comes first.
She has her own ambition. It's a very complex, powerful character. Every movie needs its bad guys, and the Harkonnens are the old ancestral enemies of the Atreides.
The Harkonnen are a family that have controlled the spice for many generations.
Frank Herbert created a very powerful character into Baron Vladimir Harkonnen.
Just shows up, and then his shadow looms throughout the film. He's the cause of many people's death.
Rabban is a nephew of the Baron, and he is a very sadistic and mean. Not the smartest guy. Rabban really wants to please his uncle, and the Baron looks at Rabban as more of a pawn, and just doesn't really feel much for him.
Piter de Vries is the mentat of the Harkonnen family. He's been twisted by the Baron Harkonnen. He's kind of strung Piter out, and Piter is so devoted to this cause of retaining the Harkonnen control of the spice.
The Fremen are native tribes. People living in the deep desert. They have the capacity to adapt to the toughest environment. Deep heat, massive sandstorm, dangerous predators all around.
Stilgar is the leader of the Fremen. He is a powerful character. He's a warrior, but also he's a warrior. He worries about the future.
Lots of kinds. And the surface was seemingly just somebody who's an ecologist, someone who cares about the Fremen. But then you start to understand how much pressure she is actually under just to keep everything contained and controlled.
Paul is dreaming about this strange young woman that keeps talking to him in his dreams. He feels like an old friend again and someone that wants to guide him.
Shani is native to Arrakis. She's used to this hostility between her people and the people that are trying to take from her land. She's a fighter at the end of the day. When she does meet Paul, her guard is up. She looks at this person as like, this is a child.
But there's clearly something else. There's a glimmer of something between them.
It's indescribable what that feeling would be of a proximity of physical attraction in dream form that comes with a terrible purpose. It comes with a very intense actualization. So I think Shani represents all those things to him.
But it seems that he truly cares about the people, and there's a deeper humanity within him.
They're on a path of conflict, and it's the moral catalyst to Paul's arc towards something greater.
Right at the beginning of the movie, we will see Paul reluctantly training with Gurney Halleck. Gurney tries a bit like we do sometimes with teenagers to warn him, to wake him up.
When you first see Gurney with Paul, it's more of a professor-teacher thing where you're seeing moves. You're in this place where you're like, okay, you're supposed to be tat, 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 tat.
That's what we shot first. Those were my first 3 days. But on those days, Josh was captain, had done combat sequences like that. And true to the nature of the scene, he's the weapons master. So he took the lead.
The basic blocks, but which are functional in real world fighting.
You have to combination of very fast move, a bit like a chess player that does several moves in advance in order to kill the king. It's the same thing.
And once Timothy's character says, I'm not in the mood, that's where it becomes a real fight.
It's a cross mix between martial arts and fencing, where you do a certain amount of movement to distract the opponent in order to be able to bring the blade inside his shield. So it's very fast pacing, close combat, very precise, using hands, both hands and knives in order to be able to kill the opponent. It's a very specific technique that belongs to Dune.
Now you can take it away. I just sent.
Okay, so if that is, you mean like that? Yeah.
The Atreides system I based on Akali and a specific style of Akali, Balintawak, which is very, very short movements because their blades are shorter. So it adapts to that type of weapon, depending upon the character and also the actor that is brought in. I would love to make sure that their specific abilities physically are being utilized. What was their background? Even if it's not martial arts, do they understand tennis? Do they play soccer? And try to, in their training process, relate to them in that way first, and then kind of slowly guide them along and go, okay, this is how we do it in fight world now.
It took a while, but learning kata fighting with the sticks, and filming myself and then looking at it and actually learning from it.
Josh is great. I had a great time with him personally, as well as showing him the choreography.
Because you want to show the effect of the sword going in, let them drop to their knees, and then decide to cut.
It's a fight that was very difficult for me to learn because I'm just more, look at me, man. There's no, what I mean? The silverback. So I pushed myself very, very, very hard.
Roger Yuan, we worked very hard together, and I have big gratitude to him.
Timothy was great. He had a little bit of a background in Taekwondo. He's got a dance background. So he has a wonderful memory for choreography. I said, look, do everything slow motion. Let your body feel connected so that it's not just a mechanical movement of arm and shoulder. It's that your whole body and your mind and intent of what you're doing, that's combined. Then we can go into doing it fast.
It was quite beautiful to see them evolving through time and to be able to achieve that kind of level of mastery.
Duncan is who you want by your side when you're in the foxhole.
He loves to fight. He loves the choreography. I think it's his favorite part. At one point, Duncan was trying to save the Duke, Lady Jessica, and Paul. He fails. He arrives too late, but it's the moment where we will witness for the first time Duncan's fighting skills that are closer to the samurai, and it's a choreography that had been done by Roger Ewan.
Jason came in. He's got a fight background that I recognize. Now, that's cut right there, and then you're pinning into the arm. So this is the couch. Like he trained with Chad Stahelski, who's a good friend of mine.
Jason Momoa is Duncan Idaho. He's just an ass kicker.
The big fight is about 19 stuntmen. That's at the same time, which I've never done before. Fought a lot of dudes, but not like they're all in a hallway. We've spent a lot of time training for it.
And then I realized, okay, this is just about fine tuning. He knew what techniques that he liked to do, what he's comfortable doing, what stances, and I tried to match it in.
Roger has certain technique that he brought in, and there's some collie moves that I've never really done before. There's a lot of things I can't do in this movie that only stuntmen can do. That's what's so special about them. They risk their lives for the craft, for the art, for myself.
Denis really wanted to see romantic moments that harkened from the past. And so this is why he's chosen a sword-based weapon. There's something heroic and interesting about that.
Keep right there.
Duncan is crazy, passionate, and somebody that Paul really looks up to and wishes he could be.
His energy is also contagious on set, off set.
Close the door.
These are guys that have worked all over the world, so they know how to bring an energy.
All right.
Okay.
All right, shooting. Roll sound.
Rolling.
Smooth, Jay, you got it. Spit. Set. And 3, 2, 1, go. It's really cool because Denis doesn't really get to do those kind of action pieces. And so to see the excitement and like things that necessarily that I've done, but it's through his lens, through Greg's lighting, when I go and look at it, I'm like, wow, just a total different experience, which is beautiful.
The character of the Baron is a very small role, but if you gave him enough physicality, you could create such a strong presence that he would sort of cast a shadow over the entire film, which is necessary for a bad guy.
I needed an actor with that gravitas, with that range, that will be able to bring the deep intelligence of the Baron and the cruelty. And I will say right from the start that as much Stellan is the loveliest guy, still I'm frightened of him. He's very frightening.
He's not only very gracious, but I can tell that he's a hard worker because of the makeup that he's had to put up with and go through and still be able to perform.
He is so imposing in his makeup and his look. The first time I saw him in his look was the first time I met him. And I was like, oh my God, it's incredible.
His performance is what makes that transformation believable.
So it's done, finally.
We did a tremendous amount of research and design in order to find that shape that will define the Baron.
I had long discussions with Denis about where I wanted to go with it, and that he looked different, that he had a presence that you hadn't seen before.
I didn't want the Baron to look like a caricature. I wanted a strength and power, and I wanted to feel a menace. One of the first decisions I made about the Baron is that we will not use CGI but the prosthetics. Because I wanted the actor to be in relationship directly with the character.
It's a huge undertaking. I spoke to Denis about it and said, Luve and Eva, the makeup designers in Sweden, would be my choice to create this. And Stellan was very happy with the idea.
Thankfully, they're living in Sweden. And we started doing tests very early on. And they're fantastic. They're some of the best special effect makeup people in the world.
We took Stellan for live cast, and we did a full body live cast. And we started doing a sculpt of the entire character.
If you have the full makeup, it's 7 hours. And it's physically hard. Mentally, I can't do it because it's fun watching them work.
So the first thing is in the morning, he puts the cooling suit on.
And then we pull this neck on top of him. It's like a big donut piece that goes on top. And after that, we put this headpiece.
The big thing is, of course, the change of the face and the shoulders and all that. That is very, very delicate. I mean, normally, stuntmen doesn't wear it more than 1 hour.
No.
I can easily do 2 because I'm not a sissy.
It's a real man.
And then we put on his undersuit.
Now this is the fun part. And then you have the fat skin on, and then the edges between the skin and your fake hands and your fake head has to be hand painted in, and it's a very complicated process.
It required a lot of patience from Stellan, and I'm still grateful that Stellan didn't complain.
Okay, no problem.
And I've never seen his demeanor be anything other than pleasant and gracious. And that says a lot, because I know from wearing makeup in the past that it's just not a comfortable thing.
And I also think that he does enjoy it.
Yeah.
He does enjoy becoming the Baron.
Good. Yeah.
It was mesmerizing to see the Baron come to life. He was quite frightening.
You can produce the nicest makeup and the most beautiful pieces, but if you don't have an actor that can act in what we do, then it's all for nothing. It's really the actor that makes the makeup become something that is alive.
Stellan is so possessed by the darkness of the Baron. Yeah, fantastic performance.
You don't feel wonderful all the time when you're out, but then suddenly something happens, often with another actor, and it swings, it's music. This is what I live for.
Spice is to Dune what oil is to our world. The sandworm goes in the deep desert and attacks the spice harvester because they are territorial beasts and they want to protect the spice fields.
The harvester is like a rolling factory. We always started designs on what would it really look like. The challenge was to make that look interesting. I didn't want this to be an oil rig with tank treads on it. One of the hardest parts of my job is to making something look interesting.
I think we were all expecting that it was going to be 120 degrees and it was going to be miserable, and we're in these still suits and these rubber suits and you're just dying and you're running out in the middle of the sun, and it wasn't. It was very mild and it was fun.
It was pure fun because at the end of the day, that is a moment where Paul will be for the very first time of his life in contact with the deep desert and will strangely feel home.
There was a moment Paul was kneeling in front of the spice harvester, and he wanted the kneeling in front of it to be really specific.
Denis incredibly conscientious about everyone and about the performers and checking in and making sure things are working well. He just knows how to bring the best out of them.
The sequence has to be very carefully timed, and there's a big consequence if you hold on to a shot for too long. It's, the dollar signs start going up. We very carefully crafted that. It was a collaboration really between me and Denis, but also with Sam Hudecki, the storyboard artist, that we would compare notes and try and kind of get the thing in really good shape.
The scene where you see Paul and Gurney on the back of the ramp, and they're like watching the worm take the spice crawler. They're actually on the ramp, and we actually pulled the ornithopter up on a crane.
It's a scene that required a lot of choreography, a lot of time of shooting, but honestly, those are my favorite thing because it's a sequence that doesn't rely on the dialogues or something. It just relies on cinema and the power of the images, and we had great time shooting that.
Set and action.
It was a long process because every single little thing had to be designed to try to respect the spirit in the Frank Herbert's book.
It's a luxury to have that vision and not so much rely on your imagination. It's pretty great.
When the camera lands, look at the camera and say, kneel. 3, 2, 1, go.
Kneel. I think there was an expansiveness to the sets from an acting perspective you could just feed off of with ease. It didn't feel like we were shooting on a stage or a studio.
I read the script and I can't help it. Images come to mind, like strong images. I create mood boards with references, with little sketches, and I bring them to Denis. So for him, it's important to make this movie his vision. So we try to make something very different from what's been done before.
I'm a strong believer that you must build as much as possible because it will influence acting. It will influence the imagination of the actors. It will influence myself. as a director.
And fun to work.
Tons of ideas are being born right on the day on set because the way the light falls, it changes your way to approach reality when you are in a real environment.
They come from a land in Caladan. It's a bit more cozy. You could almost smell the fireplace going, and it's all integrated in nature. For me, Caladan is what we would relate to as a medieval castle. It's also a big contrast with Arrakis.
When Paul Atreides lands on Arrakeen, he's confronted to a new kind of architecture that looks nothing like his own. Designed to resist the worst sandstorm, and the way to deal with heat is like to have like those thick walls and to have like those huge space.
Talk about scale? Yes. The size of it needs to be oppressive. And behind us, we have the mural of the sandworm. The idea is to have murals that show art that shows their type of culture on the planet. Here you've got the god figure of the sandworm. Let me take you to Paul's bedroom, which is a work in progress at the moment. But this is the bed. For me, it was important to have this sense of someone who is being squeezed and could be crushed at any moment.
Patrice Vermette had to be very, very creative with space. The set were like transformers, and you can transform them and change them according to the sequences.
This room will play two rooms. It will be Duncan's room, and it's also going to be Leto's room. And right now we are dressing Leto's room. This is something that Denis and we wanted this space to be a bunker. The residency needs to convey the feeling of a bunker because the wind on Arrakis, they go at 880 kilometers an hour. So it's natural that they wanted to build something that would stand the force of nature. Very little windows or very limited view of windows because they want to protect themselves from the heat. Keep, always the coolness of inside a cave. The furniture and the pieces are so bang on. Just like the shape perfectly fitted for this room. The carpet, without that carpet, the room, it's just a plain floor.
The carpets were made in Denmark by this amazing company that digitally print onto carpet. It was a local company here in Budapest that we went through. So they're real carpets, and then we aged them down as well.
It really helps give a cultural aspect to the space.
The production design is futuristic, but it's ancient to go wander through those places. I've learned so much on this. It's a beautiful thing.
The detail, the art department, hands up to them. It's just exquisite, the work that they've done. It's like doing one of those biblical CinemaScope Technicolor films from back in the day.
We're in Kind's lab, which is basically a research center where they're basically trying to get life on Arrakis. So that's about how you grow things in sand or with lack of moisture. Looked at scientific equipment, weird stuff, and also then just tried to link it in with a reality like that's the equivalent of a grow light. Denny didn't want anything that looked remotely like it was from a lab that he recognized. Guys are working at the studio for us, made everything.
This is just one room, and it's based, I saw early on in my research, Second World War bunkers. It was like one main corridor and multiple circular chambers around. It's an ancient lab. And in the main office, there are ancient writing. But if you look at in the texture, I wanted to have some writing that almost is camouflage in the texture of the rock. So it's the layers of the past, it's the knowledge from this planet, and it represents the culture that has been invaded by the empires.
There was a tremendous amount of work that was made by Patrice and his team. We worked very hard to create something that has not been seen before, which is not easy.
It's very smooth working with Denis. We have the same love for filmmaking. We agree on aesthetics. He's a passionate man. To be invited to work on a movie like this is beyond any dreams. So, I'm very grateful for that.
Here we go. Dune took years to be made because it was a challenge to respect the spirit of Frank Herbert's book and bring it to the big screen. Maybe the most important thing of all, I wanted the design to be inspired by nature. The light, the wind, the dust to feel that these worlds, these were real natural environments.
Frank's book, as a world builder, he created this whole epic because I knew Denis really wanted to honor the book. So I would sort of triangulate between Denis' words, Frank's passages, and try to inform how to go forward with my designs. I read in Frank's words in his passages that there was 200-mile-an-hour winds and everything was really designed to deal with this brutal environment of Arrakis. It's almost like solving a puzzle, how to make those into something you've never seen before in a movie.
What I would do is just deal with very simple shapes and maybe just a little detail on the side just to give you a sense of scale. That was very interesting in terms of trying to design something that made sense.
When Paul Atreides lands on Arrakeen, he's confronted to a new planet, a planet, the most converted and most dangerous planet in the galaxy.
From a color perspective, Denis wanted Arrakis to be harsh and desolate.
It's everything that's on there. It's all like stone, brown, sand color.
In the past, I've shot in Jordan, and I remember 10 years ago saying to myself, wow, if ever the day I make a movie like Dune, that's where I'm coming. There are unique, fantastic rock formations that look like from another world.
I've never seen a desert like that. I'm a rock climber. I've never seen rock like that.
The light is absolutely unique in that place. The surroundings, the color of the soil, the sky. It feels like there's very much a spirituality that exists there.
When you're on Arrakis, it's a hot, desert, arid environment. So it's a very, very strong light, and it's something you can't reproduce in the studio. Arrakeen is actually based on an actual area in Wadi Rum. It was scouted by a helicopter, and we found this area where it's surrounded by mountains. We would previs certain moves going into Arrakeen. We did rough geometry of the area, and then we created a rough flight path.
So the city itself needed to be a monument. We wanted to tell a story with that. This is a city that needed to feel like it was populated and that there were native Arrakeen citizens going about their daily lives within it. The city itself as a character was very important to Denis. We had an opportunity to let him design his own cameras to fly over the city. And we were able to build a low-resolution version of the city, place it on an iPad for him to walk around and be able to design his own camera angle as if he was shooting it live action from a helicopter.
City elements were shot in Budapest. The soundstage were like 2 football fields. We recreated a gigantic tarmac for the Atreides landing. So that for the set extension to create this, we had to use sand screens. We found when you put the sand screen in the negative, it becomes blue. So it's an inverted blue screen.
It works really well for when you're out in the desert as well, because you just invert it and you're already in that color.
Dune is a movie about nature. It was very important for me to be as close as possible with nature itself. The desert gave us a lot. We captured it with the cameras, and I'm very proud of what we brought back from there. I wanted the costume design to be like from another world. Every single little thing had to be designed with the complexity and style.
He didn't want to make a run-of-the-mill sci-fi film. He wanted something more psychological, but it was a big undertaking.
The logistical needs of the film were equal to the creative needs, so we really had to mount a small army to achieve this.
They did over 200 specialty costumes, some of which were very complicated to put together.
We looked at tons of medieval references, medieval nuns for the Bene Gesserits. It was a wealth of places from the past to create the future.
One of my favorite images is when the Reverend Mother lands and she walks out of the ship with the following Bene Gesserit women. And they look like scarabs. And it also resembles the harshness of the buildings and the landscape around them.
The Harkonnens had their own colorway. The Atreides had their own colorway. And as we worked with this, we tried to separate those houses.
The Harkonnens are very bug-inspired, with layers and scales and crests. And even their helmet is very ant-like.
Ugh, the costume is so good. They're some of the coolest things I've ever worn in a film.
I mean, the costumes were gorgeous. The way they fit everyone.
With the Fremen, the minute you put these robes on, there's a certain regality
The still suit, it's like heavy duty to make something that's just like a gray thing look so beautiful. I don't know how they did it.
There was something about those still suits that were very practical. I felt myself come to when I put it on.
I think that Denis is making a film classic, and I hope people come away with that feeling that I had watching those movies back in the day.
Seeing films of this scope and of this passion, I hope that we've contributed to that in a meaningful way.
Some elements of the movie are closer to our reality, so the audience can rely to the humanity and to the drama of the characters. And the ornithopter is one of the elements that I choose to go in that direction. In the book, it's described as kind of a plane that use a propelling system that looks like a bird, ornithopter. It's like a kind of challenge to bring that to the screen because it can either look fantastic or very silly.
I love how kind of childish everyone is when it comes to talking about these incredible things, ornithopters that look like flying bugs and beetles.
To make this a reality, we started back in February 2018 with Vinny, and George Hall came along, and then we conceptualized this first version of the ornithopter. We had insect references, we had bird references, we got helicopter references, and then as we went along, we had like more angular references for the world of Dune.
The biggest challenge was Frank described something that flapped and, this futuristic propulsion on Arrakis. I think it was because of the outlawing of thinking machines, so he wanted something kind of low-tech. So I would start doing his little sketches and then start kind of really designing the mechanics of it first and then making that into a shape. What I have in front of me are some examples of my final ornithopter illustration. But the process goes from sketch to drawing, then I will model it in 3D, then come back to drawing, get notes from Denis that may be more otherworldly or more functional.
I was trying to get closer to the idea of an insect instead of a bird, because there will be a feeling of power and a feeling that will look more realistic. We were getting closer to a dragonfly cross-mix with a helicopter.
It flaps its wing, but ours is just like a very, very fast movement, almost like a vibration, just like a hummingbird or a dragonfly.
I worked with Patrice and also another artist named Coley Wirtz, who took from my beginning designs and took it to the next level, where, really figured all the details and worked with BGI to build them full size on set. We had to figure out every nut and bolt on this thing for the actors to be inside and out.
They've been constructed in such a way that when you're next to them, the amount of detail that they have is amazing. I was just blown away, really.
I said to Patrice, I want them to look as real as possible. I want my mother to believe that this thing can fly for real. I want it to obey to gravity laws. I want it to feel muscular. I don't want it to be necessarily elegant. I want it to be like bulky and powerful machine that looks like a military helicopter.
These machines, they work into extreme condition on Arrakis. There's winds at 850 kilometers an hour. So you cannot have something that is small and very delicate. It needs to be tough, and they are beasts, they're big, especially when they were indoors in London. They look huge and quite impressive. The wingspans are 129 feet. And this one is 75 feet long and 11 tons, which created a lot of problems because they need to be on cranes, they need to be flying.
So stand by to go, guys, please.
Worm sign warning acknowledged.
Too cold to go to eject minor. So Denis wanted to be seen to be shot in IMAX. This is why the cockpit is in tears, because when the cover is not there, you see the world in there. Also, because of the angles of the glass, you're totally submersed by the desert. It's also to give the spectator an interesting point of view.
I think of the excellent skill level of Patrice, the ornithopter, which felt like a real thing. It felt like something that you wanted to strap into. You wanted to put your seatbelt on.
The job in CG was to add any wings, especially if it needed to animate, to open up and then to fly. And there was a lot of work done in animation to get a range of motion as to how this ornithopter flies, because obviously there are some dramatic scenes where it dives down and it's highly maneuverable. And also, you have people like Duncan Idaho who you wanted to give it a certain swagger as well as he flew. One thing which we did do to try and keep things believable is that we did a lot of helicopter work. The idea being that you'd have your camera helicopter shooting an ornithopter, and that way, you then use lenses specific because, you're actually shooting it for real, and you never get too close. That you never get any of those CG shots, which are highly unlikely.
There's so many ideas in the movie that are complex, are foreign, or are strange, that I wanted the audience to have some ground at some place so they can feel some kind of familiarity. And we came up with that shape that I deeply love, that is very unique